Hello, everyone. At least those of you who are maybe waiting for me to come on, or for those who are coming in late and seeing the replay. We're gonna start into topics in about 10 minutes from the time that I start going live. That gives people time to come in, to chat a little bit, say hi. Some people to get their notifications if YouTube is going to bless them enough to say, here is your notification. Or if they're just going to go, nah, you never know what to expect. So, hello, people coming in. Good to see. My throat's already been a little itchy today. I was trying to shoot my this and that this morning, and because I have to do that one early if Jace is going to show up, which he's not here today, but I still like getting it done early so I can start working on it. The editing of it before I even go live. So I'm a little better than halfway through it, which is good. Usually I only get a couple minutes in by the time I get around to going live, because I'm trying to do a bunch of other stuff too. Like finding out what's going on with the chickens. Why are they making so much noise? Does the greenhouse need to be opened up? How hot is it out? Etc. So yeah. I can't remember if I had any other announcements I was going to make before I get going, but we will start on the hour. And so, by the way, if you are coming in watching the replay, you want to miss all this stuff, understandable. Just scooch that little status bar into about the 10-minute mark. I should be, if I'm watching the clock and not in the middle of answering a question, I should be getting started on the topic. So just be patient. Sometimes there's human elements involved. Well, all the time, because I'm human. I'm not AI, as if that's perfect. Oh, man. I do have another funny story, though. Just the nerve of people. And then the assumptions they make, or they're just trying to gaslight and be really what they're doing is insulting you because they don't want to admit they're wrong. So I'm sure you guys, it's like the herb thing. I really don't care how you pronounce it. I was taught in school and at home, it's pronounced herb. When people started questioning me on this, I started looking into it, and yeah, that's how we pronounce it here in America. That's what I thought. I thought that's what we were taught in school, because we go to the etymology, the true etymology of the word. Now, how people in other countries pronounce it, cool. That's the way they pronounce it. Doesn't make them right or wrong. That's the way they do it. So I'm sure you've heard me talk about that wild herb that grows in the yard, in most people's yards or somewhere around, and that is plantain. Well, there's two types of plantain. There's the banana type of plantain, which in Spanish, I believe banana is called plantano, but the one referred to as plantain is a specific kind of banana. And then you have the herb, the wild herb that grows. It bears seeds, and you can do stuff with the seeds, but it's not a tree. So two very, very different types of plants. However, the pronunciation of this word, especially when you're talking about the herb itself, can be said a couple of different ways. And it's all going to depend on where you're from. And, the French have their own way of pronouncing it, of course. But even here in the States, it can be pronounced plantain or plantain. It's really kind of all about where you put the emphasis and whether or not you make that second syllable a long A sound. Both are correct. And in all the years I've been talking about plantain, I only had one person, a local person, question me, and she's like, "Oh, I thought it was called plantain." I said, "Well, maybe it is." That was years ago. I think that was before I even started my channel. So I looked it up, and come to find out it's pronounced both ways, but most commonly it is pronounced plantain. But some guy came in yesterday and was just, you could tell by the way he's talking, trying to sound like he's being polite, but really what he was doing was belittling me the whole way through his diatribe, that I was saying it wrong and laughing at me about it. And all I did was tell him, I said, "It's actually pronounced both ways." There's always these people that are like, "Look it up." Like they think, "Ooh, that's gonna really get them." They look it up. And so I'm like, "Maybe I should look it up again. It's been a while just to make sure I'm remembering it correctly." And I was. In fact, you go listen to pronunciations, you might get the first two, plantain, but if you keep listening to all of them, all the rest of them, plantain. So obviously it is the most common way to pronounce it. And I just told him, I said, both ways are correct. I said, I actually did look it up years ago. And, but here's a link. You can listen to all of the ways it's pronounced. And I just said, I just love how people like to come in here and try to act like they're smarter than everyone because they don't pronounce a word their way. I probably shouldn't have added that last part because I could tell it really kinda got him. So then he started saying, "Oh, I was just giving you facts. I'm sorry I made you cry." And I'm like, "Who's crying?" Why I interact with these people is because sometimes it's almost like a game, and it's kind of fun. Really, I should just ignore them. And I said, "Who's crying?" I said, "You brought up a point. I gave you a link to show you that we're both correct on this." I said, "Big deal. It's not a big deal." And so then he comes back and goes, "See, you're still crying about it. Wah, wah, wah." And and all I did was put a bunch of laughing faces, and it really did actually make me laugh. But there's that part of me that just wanted to say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was actually talking to an adult, not a juvenile." But I thought, don't poke the bear anymore. And I decided after I put my little laughing faces, I'd just block him from the channel so nobody could see it. But he'll still see my reply. He should still be able to see my reply. But if he says anything more or makes any other comments, nobody will be able to see it. So just because I didn't want to delete it, because then he would know I deleted it. And he probably won't see this live. So, and I don't care. I really don't care. I just think it's funny how people are like, it's so childish when you actually call them out on their bad behavior. "Oh, I'm sorry I made you cry." I mean, it's like, what, are we 12 now? What happened here? What happened? So it actually does make me laugh all the while. I mean, really, as I was reading his comment, I was smiling and almost laughing. And when I put those laughing faces, I meant them. I wasn't doing a scowl and making laughing faces to make him think I'm laughing at him. No, I was actually laughing at him. He probably won't believe it or doesn't want to believe it. I appreciate the people that will come back and say, "Oh, I was wrong. I'm sorry." Like there was the one guy that was like trying to correct me. He was an American trying to correct me on how to say herb. And I said, "Well, if you're from at least parts of the UK, it is pronounced with the H." But I know I've told you guys this story before, but some of you coming in here might have heard not have heard it before. But I said, "But in America, it's pronounced without the H, kind of like this, like the other H words that's like honest, hour, like on the hour, heir, as in heir to an inheritance, and honest. These are all words with silent H's. And in some places in the States, even the word humble is pronounced umble. It depends on where you're from. And but anyway, when I was listing off all those words, and it goes, all hard H's. And I'm like, this guy can't be serious. I said, "Are you seriously telling me you pronounce the H in all those words?" And because I've never heard people use the H in honest, heir, hour, honor. I've never heard that. I didn't tell him that part. I just asked him, "Are you serious?" And then he came back and he said, "Actually, no. I just didn't want to admit I was wrong." he said something funny, and that made me laugh. I could appreciate that. At least he admitted it. It was kind of hilarious. So the herb guy story is exactly what I was referring to. Oh, yeah. So you remembered that story. Holly, it's years of practice. I used to be super, super shy. Well, I still am. I still get very insecure. I don't like being in settings with a whole bunch of people much. It's very difficult for me, even though I've had to do it for years. But I think because of teaching dance and teaching martial arts to adults and children alike, yeah, you do have to learn along the way to toughen up a little bit, but internet is very different than dealing with people in real life. And people just I mean, right from the day I started not from the day I started my channel, but I wasn't long into starting my channel when somebody came in and just started tearing me up because God is good all the time, just tearing me up. And unfortunately, being so new to dealing with that kind of stuff, I wasn't really prepared and I didn't handle that one as well. I did ask them, I said, "Do you do this to people of other religions too?" And, telling me I believed in the flying spaghetti monster and all that silly nonsense. And, and I'm sure, atheists think what I believe is nonsense, and that's fine. They can believe that. I have atheists that think it is all nonsense, yet they still treat me like a human being. And they're very civil and kind and polite. That's all it takes. It's really not that hard. What happened to that? I know I keep bringing that kind of stuff up. But anyway, I'm late. Need to get into the topic. So, hello everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. So I've got 3 topics for you today. First topic, we're talking about the 22 forbidden off-grid tricks. So of course, you can tell by the title, I got these from an AI channel. And so for those who are new to my whole series on watching AI videos, so you don't have to, it's kind of a 2, 3-fold purpose why I'm doing this. Part of it is excuse me, part of it is to kind of buck the system and what's going on. You got these AI channels coming in, pushing out real life creators, and especially in the last few months, any channel that started, I mean, some of these are channels that have been around for a while that somehow suddenly changed, or they just were sat there and then suddenly became these AI, putting out all these AI videos in the last few months. And you learn to recognize it. And a lot of times the title and the thumbnail will tell, oh, it's got to be AI. so, so that's part of the reason. Also, because of the fact that it's like, hey, if they can steal my content and other real life content creators' content, because I've seen my clips in some of these videos. I've seen other channels' clips in some of these videos. They're real clips that the AI gathered and then stuck them in there. And so this is why I'm doing that, but also because it is kind of fun. You do get some interesting thoughts and ideas. And also the other reason though, is I want to take some of this and put it in more down to earth, real life human being terms, because even though AI tends to rob the ideas, the methods and stuff from real people, not all of the ideas are the best for everyone, and some of them shouldn't even be practiced at all. And some of them, AI sometimes gets its information from really bad sources. But this one I thought was in particular, it was interesting as there was a few things in here I had never heard of. And because of that, I did make it a point to look those up to make sure, okay, is this something real? I never heard of that. I think there was at least 2 of those. So I looked them up to make sure they were real before I put them in my list. And the funny thing was it was originally 25. But of course, like AI does, it repeated a few of the things, which made it kind of funny. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this list. Most of this stuff you guys have heard of, but it's still things that are good to be reminded of. And I like kind of sharing, what I do in regards to some of this. So number 1 is well, 1 through 3 points, 1 through 3 were about water. So, having a well, having rainwater, or having this is one of the ones I hadn't heard of, a spring box, which was rather interesting. So let me read. I wrote this really small in my terrible handwriting, though I tried to be neat. So basically, a spring box is when you like if you have a piece of property where you have a hillside and then you go down to where the water is going to seep and you dig that out and you kind of build like a almost like an open cistern. And so the water will seep out into this open cistern. So in a way it's kind of like a well, but not really. It's like you're making your own little um reservoir by doing that. So spring box is what that was called. So I thought that was very interesting. For us, we do, well, we do have a on on our other 2 pieces of property, we do have creeks that go through them, but here on our little shy 1/3 acre property in a neighborhood, we can't have a well here, but we do have rainwater collection, so that's what we use. Now, as far as the forbidden part, I in some states, in some places, yes, some of these things are considered illegal or forbidden. Um, Not all of them though, so I thought the title was a little clickbaity for the AI to say that because not all of them are from well, I don't know. Maybe some of them are in places I don't know about, but there's a lot of this that I'm like, there's no way all these things are actually illegal or forbidden. So anyway, so that was 1 through 3. Number 4 would be an ice house. So an ice house, as most of you have probably heard of, is for keeping things cold. This was very common. You getting ice blocks, cutting ice blocks out of a lake in the wintertime. And sometimes the ice house could be below ground, sometimes it was above ground. I've seen, I think it was in Farmer Boy, they actually had the ice house up high, up off the ground. So they had to climb up, but I'm thinking, it seems like I remember reading that. I don't know, maybe I'm not remembering it right. But either way, they would cut out these big ice blocks and haul them back, put them in the ice house and stack them up. And between all the layers, they were either putting layers of wood shavings or straw that would help insulate that. So the whole idea was to get the ice in the ice house to be able to last all through the summer to preserve their foods and keep them cold. So it was just a big refrigerator basically is what it was. And then usually by winter that ice was pretty well melted and then they would start all over again once the lakes froze over. And, so anyway, there's that. Um, Illegal, forbidden? I don't know. Sounds kinda silly to me that it would be, but then again, so is the government with their silly laws. So, okay, number 5 was a smokehouse for food preservation. Now, the funny thing about this, it is actually quite common. A lot of people around here either build or buy a smokehouse, and, because where we live, salmon, steelhead, etcetera, these are common fish that a lot of people catch. And so a lot of people like to smoke them. And we don't have a smokehouse. I don't know why. I would really like for us to build one at some point because it is actually a really great way to preserve meats. And so aside from just drying meats, smoking was a really good way to preserve your meats because of the way the smoke works. It helps to uh I'm gonna probably say it all wrong, but prevent and kill the bacteria that's gonna cause decay. And plus it adds a really nice flavor. Like smoked salmon around here is so common to get, and it is really, really good. So I really hope to build one at some point if we ever think to do it when we actually have time. But it's one of those things I kick myself in the rear for not thinking to mention more when I'm talking about preserving meats. I'm usually thinking about the ways I do it, and I haven't done that one yet. I have tried salt curing with some fish, and it was okay. Um, it's very, very salty. And if you don't want it super salty, you got to rinse it out good before you use it. But I couldn't get it to fully dry with just the salt, so I don't know if I just didn't do it right. But I went ahead and stuck it in the dehydrator to let it finish drying. And then I still stored it in the fridge just in case I didn't get it dry enough. But last time I checked it, it's actually still really good. It tastes good. It's just really salty, eating it straight. But to actually use it in something, you'd want to rinse out the excess salt. So what do we got here? See, hi Heidi and fellow subscribers. Good place to be here. Cool. Yeah. Yay, I caught a live. I love all the AI you've been doing. Oh, good. Good. Because we can't wait to see you roast the AI. Let's see. What does Linda say? Whatever anyone believes, they still want to survive emergencies. Yes. Yes. Okay, so number 6 is a cook stove. Now, the thing I like, now we don't have, actually, do we have a cook stove yet? I think we might have bought a small one. I know we've been eyeballing some for our whatever off-grid cabin we build if we ever get around to that. It's that piece of property that we want to get set up to be completely off-grid is going to be a long, long process due to time. But we do keep our eyes open for a good cook stove, that some like secondhand, trying to find one. And every now and then you see one, but it's either too far away or whatever. But what we do have here is we have a wood stove. Again, I know a lot of you already know this, but we have a wood stove. We've had when we first bought this place, when we were getting married, there was a fireplace that had a wood stove insert, so we had that. But the problem with inserts is there's no stovetop area. Very few of them have any kind of, some of them might have a little shelf where you can put coffee or tea on to at least keep it warm, but you can't really cook on it. So, and the inserts aren't super efficient. So eventually, I don't know when it was, but we eventually had a mason come in and redo all the brickwork from, take the insert out, redo all the brickwork to make it so that we could put a freestanding wood stove in there. And we started with one that we already had on hand because it used to be in this room. And then we took that out because I was going to start using this room for a dance studio. And we saved it. And then that's what we put in there. But it was a step. It has the steps. So it has like 2 smaller areas on top, which is fine for doing a lot of things. But I wanted something that had one solid, flat, big surface. So once I started cooking on it, because we've always used wood to heat the house. And eventually we decided to upgrade. And that was when we got the one we have now that has a nice big flat surface that I can stick big, huge pans on. And I love that. So I have made one thing about having a wood stove, whether it be the kind that I have that you can use for cooking, you can even get a stovetop oven to put on there. Sorry, I kind of got sidetracked there. I blanked out. A wood stove of either kind, be it a cook stove or a freestanding, just regular heat the house wood stove, is still very, very multi-purpose, and which is why it makes it a great off-grid thing all the way around. Whether you want to live off-grid or you want to have a way to survive when the power goes out, it covers so many bases. That's why I love it so much. You use it to heat the house. You can use it to heat water for cleaning up with, whether it be yourself or your dishes. You can use it for dehydrating. You can use it for cooking. You can even use it for baking. You can use it for drying your laundry. And did I say dehydrating? Because, yeah, I did. Because Patrick made the little dehydrator racks that I can put on top of the wood stove for doing things like making beef jerky, or put next to the wood stove for drying herbs and the like. So that is why, to me, if you can afford it, getting a wood stove is a great, and you have the space and the ability and all that, it's a great place to start just because it covers so many bases. It's not cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than putting it in solar power. I'll tell you that for certain. And yeah, covers a lot of bases. So, okay, moving on from there, number 7 is a root cellar. And so yeah, we've kind of thought maybe about putting a root cellar at our other piece. We don't have a good place here because our area is too small for a root cellar. But then the other issue you have, see out there, it would have to be kind of against because we have a little hillside, maybe there. That would probably be the safest place. But the problem with a root cellar here is because of the amount of rain we get, it's not the best. But it is a good common way people would use to keep it's called a root cellar because it's commonly used for root vegetables like carrots, potatoes, but also things like apples, pears, and squash, but also canned goods or your ferments. Root cellars are great for this kind of thing. But you also have to consider your area and, do you get 120 inches of annual average rainfall? It might not be the best thing to put in unless you have the right place to put it where the ground is going to, the water's going to drain out good and not fill up your root cellar. But then the other way, which would be more applicable here, would be a spring house, which is what Patrick's dad had when they lived in North Carolina. That's how they kept food cold, was in their spring house, which a spring house is built. I know you guys have heard me talk about this before, but I still got to say it. There's always new people. And basically, it's just a little structure that's built right on the edge of a spring, or maybe practically right over a spring, and the water going through or around it, depending on how it's built, is how it would keep things cold or at least cool. And so that was one of the other ways that was used for such a purpose, refrigerating things like your dairy and your butter and your cheeses and your fruits and vegetables and meats. I mean, aside obviously from canning and drying and so on. But there's certain things you wanna keep fresh, you wanna just keep them cold. And then, it taught their ninth point was fermentation. Of course, fermentation is a great way to preserve foods for long term, and plus you're getting the good healthy probiotics. My only issue about fermentation being pushed so much is that it's really not for everyone. But I think everybody can find at least some type of fermentation that they can handle and that they like. Like Patrick doesn't like a lot of fermented foods. So most of the fermented foods I make get eaten by me. But some, like the kimchi and the fermented hard boiled eggs, but I will ferment things that will get used in meals, like, fermented snow peas. Sometimes I'll ferment garlic and onions. And that way I do still store them in the fridge just to keep them from going too soft too soon. You can also add things like either grape leaves or horseradish leaves to prevent these things from softening up too fast. I still had a few, by the way, snow peas left that I'd fermented last year that I forgot about. And those did get mushy right there at the end, but they lasted for months, stayed crisp for months. So that's the one bad thing about fermentation is either it's not for everyone, or B, your stuff can still, even if you use horseradish leaves, because I had horseradish leaves in these, and grape leaves, those will really help. It's the tannins in there that help keep them crisp. However, they're still only gonna last so long before they turn to complete mush. You might still be able to eat them, but they can get pretty mushy over time. So you're gonna wanna consume those within a certain period of time. That's not something you wanna look at for long-term storage. So, but it is an excellent way to preserve food. I'm definitely going to say that. I just think people need to look past it being the only way to preserve food, especially if you're wanting to make sure you have plenty put up. It's like putting up eggs or putting up anything else. You never know from year to year if suddenly something's going to happen and you lose all your chickens to either disease or to, certain agencies that want to come in and kill your chickens, or to maybe just a bad year growing something. Like I looked again, I see no plums on my tree. I'm bummed. Last year was the first year we really got some plums on that tree, and I was so excited. But thankfully, I canned up a bunch. But now I'm wishing I would have canned up more instead of giving a bunch of them away. And that's why what I mean, you want stuff that you know is going to last good for at least 2 or 3 years. Biblically speaking, the when they had a sabbatical year with their garden, they were instructed to put up enough for 3 years. There was supposed to be enough food to last them 3 years. And so you got to look at it that way. And fermentation is something you're going to want to work through fast, and then but still have ways to put up food for long term to last at least 2 to 3 years. Okay, and then hard cheese aging, that was number 10. And there's the waxing of cheese, but I'm actually going to do a separate video, short one, on why I won't wax cheese anymore. It was a fun thing to do one time. Well, I did it a few times actually. And there's reasons why I won't do it again, but I think hard cheese aging isn't necessarily just waxing though. Because putting up hard, like Parmesan is considered a hard cheese. That's something that I don't even think you need to wax it. You really don't, because there's so little moisture in it in the first place. But that's the thing with waxing, is you got to make sure a lot of the moisture is out of it before you wax it anyway. So moving on, number 11 was keeping bees and having a raw honey storage. Like us personally, we're not to a point yet where we're keeping bees, so we'd like to someday, but we do put up a lot of raw honey because, of course, it never spoils. The worst that happens is it can crystallize, which there's nothing wrong with that. You can actually melt it down as long as if you want to keep it raw, you got to use a real low heat. Melt it down and get those crystals out if it matters. But crystallized raw honey is still good honey. It's not spoiled. But the thing about raw honey is it's more than just a food source. It is also good for healing many things. It can be a good medicinal thing to have on hand. And though Manuka honey is like the most medicinal, it does not have to be Manuka honey, which I do have some on hand that's reserved only for that, but it's very expensive. And I don't like the flavor of it, so I wouldn't want to just eat it anyway. So 2 reasons why it's reserved for only medicinal purposes, that one. Okay, this was another one I might have heard of. It sounds vaguely familiar, but if I had heard of it, I've completely forgotten about it. And that is a cold corner pantry. So this would be where, you build a pantry. It doesn't have to be shaped to the corner, but it would be a pantry that you would put in the corner of at least one wall needs to be an outside wall. And preferably two, both of the walls would have to be something that would lead to the outside, not interior walls. And then what they would do is you would have 2 vents. You would have one at the bottom and one at the top that would vent to the outside. So then in the winter, the cold air would come in from the bottom and then go out the top, and it would stay vented and the air would circulate, but it would also stay very cold in there. And like I said, I just vaguely sounds familiar, like I've seen or heard of this somewhere before. And I'm like, what an excellent idea. And then obviously in the summer months, that's not going to work as well because you're going to have hot air likely coming in, but well, it'd probably come in from the top and then push out the bottom, but you would just block those off. You'd seal off those holes so you wouldn't have that hot air coming in. I suppose they would use something else to keep their food cold. But at least during the winter, it'd be a way you could have it's pretty much a non-electric indoor refrigerator, but it's only going to be good for that really during the cold months of the year. Kind of like the ice house. Well, the ice house is good for the warm months of the year. So, because it's got so much ice in there, it takes all summer for the ice to melt. Okay. Let me stop and read a few comments because I know there's a lot. I seen Tyler was in here. Hard cheese. We do both wax and brine sealing. Brine sealing. I hadn't heard of that one. Interesting. So there's one. If for those of you who are watching this and you don't know what that is, go look it up. I'm sure Tyler will probably explain it, but not everybody's going to be able to see the chat. Waxing after all the whey is gone works to maintain moisture. Brine makes it very dry and hard cheese. Okay. Thank you, Tyler. I didn't know about horseradish leaves and ferments. Yes. This when I learned about that and that horseradish can be a good option over grape leaves, I found it works better. However, it will add a little bit of horseradish flavor. So I prefer using the horseradish leaves when I'm making cucumber kimchi, especially, and it keeps the cucumbers in there crisp for a long time, way better than grape leaves. I tried grape leaves before and did okay, I guess, but the horseradish leaves kept it crisp much longer than the grape leaves did. And it added that nice little, it's just a hint of horseradish flavor. But if you don't like horseradish flavor, you wouldn't like that in there. And I wouldn't use those in a sweet type ferment. I can't think of any sweet type ferment I'd want to use those in. Of course, most any type of ferment that would be on the sweet side, I wouldn't need that anyway. So, because usually that's wine or sodas or, you know, vinegars. Well, vinegars aren't sweet when they're done. Okay, moving on. Let's see. Where were we? So I talked about the cold. Did I skip one? Oh, no, I didn't. We just went back to talking about the cheese. So then I'm sure you guys have heard of the thermal mass wall, having a thermal mass wall, which is passive solar. Then number 14, a hand pump kitchen sink faucet. I know many of you, if not all of you, have seen those before, but that was very commonplace. I believe, I remember when Jamie was still alive, Zach had put in a a kitchen, one of these hand pumps in the kitchen. I remember how happy Jamie was with that. I'm assuming he still has it there. So that's Zach from an American Homestead, and then his wife now, Michelle. And but anyway, yeah, that would be if we didn't have any like running water that way, that would just be excellent. See, we have the rainwater system, but we also are on public city water. So we do both. Just same thing with the electricity. We do both solar and public power. We make the best of both worlds. We could survive without the city water and the public power if we had to. But there's certain times of the year it is definitely nice. Like winter times when we get all the rain and summer times when we get all the solar. Okay, so and then like this, and this is definitely something you see a lot currently, and that is kerosene or propane run refrigerators. So they're very much like an electric refrigerator, but they run on propane or kerosene. We knew some people that were totally off grid. They had solar and they had a well. Did they have a rainwater catchment? I think so. I don't remember. But they had usually those refrigerators aren't very big. So they had 2, a his and a hers. So she kept all her stuff, like her milk kefir and whatever she was fermenting in hers, and he kept his stuff in his. And so that worked out good for them. And they were propane refrigerators and they loved them. They worked really, really good for them. I think let me think about that for a minute. I think they were more than just propane. I mean, obviously, camp trailers come with those, but these are the kind they're a little bigger than the kind you'd see in a typical camp trailer, and they're made for going in your house. And I think theirs was similar to the way like a camp trailer one, which can switch over to the power to electric. And I think theirs did the same thing where they could switch over to their solar power. I believe. I don't remember for sure, but that could be a really good idea to have, especially if you have solar power. But you just have to keep in mind with anything like that, you're still like in the event of a power outage, if that's what you're wanting for the event of a power outage, well, you're still going to have the propane on hand. You still have to have some sort of energy to run it. That's, you know, that's just those things you got to think about. Okay, let's see. I mean, even wood stoves, you have to make sure you have a good supply of firewood. Okay, so that was number 15. Number 16, which is why I have the thumbnail, is herbal remedies from wild plants, such as yarrow, comfrey, plantain, because I'm going to keep saying it that way. I don't care what anyone says, mullein, elderberry, and more. So obviously, did I say dandelion? I didn't even write dandelion down. But there's so many wild herbs out there. Or, whatever you would like to try to grow yourself, like me making sure I really wanted marshmallow. I really wanted arnica. It took me a few years with each. I got them. I've got more. I probably will have more than I ever need out of both of them. In fact, I keep having to dig up more marshmallow because it's like too much, but it's so beautiful in this time of year when it's growing. It's like already 6 it's at least 6 feet tall right now. It'll get about 8 feet tall, the marshmallow, and very bushy. It's like having these big, beautiful, shrubs. Unfortunately, I wish they stayed green year round because 'cause they'll die completely back and then start all over in the spring. But anyway, they look nice. I like them for that, but they do take up a lot of space, so I need to dig up more to make room for more other things as I get more marshmallow than I need. But at any rate, if it's important enough to you, kinda like the mullein, I would still really like to have mullein be something that works good for us here, but it doesn't typically like the kind of rain we get in the cooler, well, it doesn't mind cold weather. It doesn't like as much moisture as we get. So finding places to grow it, but the fact that it's not a perennial, which when I thought it was kind of disappointing. But it is some biennials are fine here if they drop seed and they come right back the next year. But a lot of things like the mullein and the echinacea, they don't do that. Well, echinacea is perennial, but anyway, so I'll keep trying. If this one, I got 2 right now. If they get flowers this year, which they should, it's the second year, I'm going to save the seeds from those. But it would mean every year I would have to start new plants every year. And I prefer to have things that I don't have to worry about, preferably. So I started watching a plantain video. The second picture was not plantain. Was it bananas? Was it the banana plantain? I posted a comment and said, I don't trust this site because of such simple mistake. Right. I've seen a lot of that too. But anyway, let's see. Number 17, one that, of course, just like the herbal remedies I make from my own homegrown herbs, bone broth. And the bone broth can be made from any animal bones. So your chicken, your turkey, lamb, beef. I actually have a lamb bone broth. I don't know when all this lamb is gone, I'm going to be sad because the best tasting lamb I've ever had. Made another lamb roast and it had a bone in it. And I had cooked that all day in a slow cooker. And that I didn't have to keep cooking it. The broth I cooked it in, it was actually reserved brine that I'd put in there just to cook it in. Oh my goodness. It made an amazing bone broth. The next day, I that night, I poured it all into a jar because I'm like, I have a feeling this is gonna, because I wanted to cook the bones more and make a stronger bone broth. But then the next day when I went to pull it out, it was already absolutely solid in that whole jar. It's just solid gelatin in there. And I'm like, I don't have to cook it anymore. So that is going to be an excellent bone broth. I don't know if I'm going to dehydrate it and powder it, or I went ahead and just stuck it in the freezer until I decide what I want to do with it, or turn it into a soup right away like I normally do with the chicken or turkey bone broth. I just don't know yet. I haven't decided, but it's nice and dark. It's beautiful bone broth, and some of the best bone broth I've made that set up very quickly. So I wonder if red meat bones just have a tendency to make a better, thicker broth than your poultry, like turkey and chicken, because sometimes I have to cook those for days for it to get that gelatinous. So anyway, there's that. There's also soap making, and this was just using hardwood ash and fat. Well, hardwood ash is where we get lye from. So they could actually that actually makes soap from the hardwood ash and the fat. Now, there is a way you can just make the lye and have it be cleaner and you're not just mixing ashes in with fat. But I don't know exactly the process of the hardwood ash and fat and soap making. I make soap with lye and coconut oil, and castor oil is my just basic recipe. But any fat, typically a lot of animal fats would be used, tallow and so on. But there's also a way you can make lye, but it has to be hardwood ash specifically. We don't get a lot of hardwood here, so a lot we end up with a mixture of woods that go into our wood stove. Some of them soft, a lot of them softwoods, and some of them hardwoods like alder. So it's getting a good making lye out of that probably wouldn't turn out really good. We haven't tried, but we'd have to make sure that if we were going to do that, made sure we only burn the hardwoods in there. And out here where we're at, most things, unless they're fruit trees, are softwoods. Most of them, not all. There are other hardwoods, but anyway, so there's that. Your soap making, candle making from the beeswax from your bees. So remember, if you're keeping bees, you're getting honey and you're getting the beeswax. That beeswax can also be used in making your salves and your skin creams and whatnots. Another thing I'll keep saying is skin cream, because that's what I make it for, is to be a skin cream. And then I have my healing salve made very similarly, used differently, slightly differently. Hand churned butter. So obviously, if you have your own dairy animals, you can make your own butter. And butter churners come in all kinds of sizes. You can get little small ones that are just like a mason jar size, or you can even get a churning top to put on a mason jar. And then you can get the big barrel looking type with the handle. You're churning that heavy cream and turning it into butter. You can even just put heavy cream in a jar and shake it for a long time, and the whey will separate out of the butter or out of the fat, and then you'll have your butter left. And personally, and then if you have to have ghee, you can turn that into ghee. I've made ghee once. It was okay. Not enough for me to bother. I like real butter or whole butter with all the parts and pieces in there better than ghee. But I realize there's some people that must have ghee. Okay. So a lot of these points are really, really obvious. And a lot of them I still think is so silly that they're called forbidden off-grid tricks. I mean, seriously, churning your own butter. But again, anymore, you can't put anything past certain governments, be they state or federal or even city for that matter. So number 21, this one, really, who's going to forbid this? I don't know. It could happen. A treadle machine, which of course, most of you know I have a treadle machine. I bought it back in 2013, brand new, because they do still make brand new treadle machines. I pronounce it genome. Apparently it's genome. I'll never remember to call it that because I'd never heard it said. I was just looking up brand new treadle machines because I couldn't find any good old classic ones, but I also wanted one that had zigzag stitch. That's an important stitch for me to have, and most of your old treadle machines don't have that stitch. And sure enough, right off the bat, I found one. Never heard of the brand name Janome before, so I pronounced it Genome. I assumed Janome. Did I say that right? Anyway, and I love that machine. It's been literally, I'm not kidding, I've been through a lot of sewing machines because I put so much wear and tear on them, especially when I was teaching dance and making all those costumes for our shows, that most of my machines would only last 1 to 2 years. and I just wear out all the gears, and it wasn't worth replacing the parts for the cost. It was better just to get a whole new machine. This one's outlasted all of them by far. It still works great, and it's been, what I say, 2013? So what, it's 13 years old? Am I right? Great machine. So potato, potato, tomato, tomato, plantain, plantain, mullein, mullein. Some people call it mullein. I think I called it when I never heard it pronounced. I think I called, what did I call it? It wasn't mullein. It was like mullein, mullein. I don't know. I can't remember what I called it. I've been saying it the so-called right way for so long. But I know people that pronounce it mullein or mullein, one of those two. Vintage sewing machines used metal gears and will last till Jesus comes. Right. Mine's still lasting though, and it's not vintage. Well, it might be almost vintage now. Well, it's got a few years to go yet. I think it has to be at least 20 years old before it's considered vintage. Okay, so then the last one, number 22, this was another one I hadn't heard of before, but it's basically another form of a root cellar without actually being a cellar, and it's called a clamp. I had never heard this name before. And somebody raise your hand if you've heard of a clamp before. And basically, all it was is they would just dig a shallow pit, line it with straw. They'd put all their especially root veggies. So again, carrots, potatoes, turnips, rutabagas, all that kind of stuff. And again, usually a lot of your different apples and the squash can do well in places like this. And then they'd put another thick layer of straw over it, and then put, what's it at, like 6 to 8 inches of soil over the top? Did I write that down? Let me see if I wrote that down. Yeah, 6 to 8 inches of soil over the top of that. And it would keep everything in there cold throughout, and until they could work through it all. And so that's a lot simpler than putting in a whole root cellar. And that might be something that would be easier for some people to do. And I've seen people use like old broke down freezers, like chest freezers that they would bury in the ground. And some people would say, it's like a root cellar. Well, it is, but now that I've learned about a clamp, I think that would be more similar to a clamp. And the reason they use these freezers is because, well, the freezer is already insulated. So even if it doesn't run anymore, you can bury that in the ground, and then the lid's insulated, the sides are insulated, the bottom's insulated, and then you put all your stuff in there, and then make it so that you can open and close the top. And also, the one other step they would take is put a pipe. So you'd have to drill a hole in the side, put a pipe that would go in there and up to the outside so that it could stay vented and get airflow in there. Otherwise, the things would more likely rot. But see, and a freezer would keep out mice. Good point. Exactly. So go to if you have a freezer that ever breaks down, there's one thing. And a chest freezer would be best for this, but I would think an upright, you could do the same thing. It would just bury it door side up either way. And yeah, I guess either way, yeah, it would still be kind of like a chest freezer that way. And I think I would do that if one of our freezers ever breaks down. I don't think I'd do it here. I don't think I have the space for it here, but maybe somewhere else on one of our other pieces of property. I think that would be an excellent idea. But even then, I still worry. It's like, but the rain, would it keep enough of the water out? I mean, obviously, if you vented it to the outside, you would have to have something over the top. So, something in there, some kind of something that would keep the rats and mice from going down in there, obviously, but also like basically a little shield like you would over the top of a chimney to keep the rainwater from getting down inside of it as well. So I'd have to talk to Patrick about that, because I wonder if we could make something like that work somewhere. I just, again, always worry about anything got to bury in the ground here is going to get saturated. So that was the 22 points, and on at least, yeah. See, I'm told the Vikings would bury butchered hogs in the sand by the sea, and that's how they discovered ham. The sea salt turned pork into ham. Oh, how interesting. Now, Patrick said that Springhouse, or well, his dad said that um, what they would do is they'd slaughter a hog every year. I can't remember what time of the year they said they would do it, but that's where they would store the meat. And I believe that Patrick's grandma would can some of it using the lard as a seal. I believe she didn't pressure can it. I think it was just cooking it through, pouring it in a jar, and then topping it off with lard that would seal it. So I know I did a video where I talked a little bit about that and linked to there's one lady, at least one lady somewhere on YouTube that has done that with the and those of us who don't eat pork, you could do I I haven't tried it, but I would think you could do the same thing with any other meat as long as you save the tallow from it and then use that to seal it off. Now, we have pressure canners, so I'll probably keep doing that or dehydrating or freezing and, cooking, freezing and dehydrating as my ways to preserve for long term, both of those. So anyway, that was that topic. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get through all three topics today. The other two are pretty short though. Let me spray my throat. It's getting pretty rough. But I should move on to those before it gets too late and at least get one of these done. So one of the reasons I wore brown, I don't know how well the colors turn out. I try to wear colors that are going to match my thumbnail. So I've got purple, which side is it on? Purple and lavender here. I've got lavender, and then I've got a brown shirt over the top for a reason, because this next one I'm going to talk about is making your own homemade frou-frou coffees or fancy coffees. I found out that apparently frou-frou is also the name of a Disney character, which I don't want people thinking I'm talking about whatever that is. So I was thinking about this because I think one of the points I'm often bringing up when I'm talking about saving money and learning how to cut costs, and that is, I remember back in the day, and it wasn't that long ago, when everybody made their own coffee. That's just the way it was. There were no such thing as coffee stands on every corner. In fact, I vaguely remember when suddenly coffee stands became a big thing, and they still are a big thing, yet they're getting progressively more expensive. And so I think it was last week I was talking about it, and I was exaggerating, or I thought I was, saying something like them being like $10 to $15. And I thought I really believed I was using hyperbole until I was listening to this video, this guy that does a lot of financial stuff. And he's playing this clip from this woman who's like, yeah, I spend $10,000 every week on just stuff. And she charges it all to her credit cards. So now what I'm going to do is hold myself accountable, and when I go out shopping, I'll video everything that I'm buying and post it here so I can keep myself accountable. And I'm thinking, well, it's not working. As you're watching her little clip from the one day, she starts out okay. Not spending a ton of money. She goes to Old Navy. She spends a couple $100, but she's stocking up on clothes for her kids and their own $6 t-shirts and stuff. Oh, okay. I can see that. And then she goes out. I've never been to a Chipotle. I don't even know if there's one around here. I don't care. Well, definitely not here, but I mean anywhere in my state. I have no idea. And she gets lunch for her and her daughter that was with her. And I think that cost her $12. I'm like, oh, well, that's not too bad. Looks like it's probably fast food, but okay. But then she goes and gets herself a Starbucks, and it cost her over $16. And it wasn't even a big one. It looked like it was maybe about a medium, like that big. And she was holding it. I'm like, that's over $16. And here I thought I was exaggerating. I'm like, she's not trying to save money. She's not trying to help herself. So with okay, and let me before I continue, let me say one thing. I am not against people buying a coffee stand coffee every now and then. No big deal. I mean, if you want to treat yourself to something fancy every now and then, fine. Or you're on the road, fine. But when I was looking up, I thought, let me look at prices. What is just to go to a coffee stand and just get plain old coffee? The cheapest price I saw was $3.50 for a single cup of black coffee. That's outrageous. How hard is it to brew your own coffee at home? I mean, I was doing that years before these coffee stands started popping up everywhere. So, okay, then you go, well, I want to treat myself. Well, you know what people used to do to make their coffee all frou-frou and fancy? They would add cream and sugar and sometimes maybe a little flavored extract of some kind. And so it's really not a difficult thing to do that. But let's just think of a few other ideas. I'm not a big one into fancy coffees, but every once in a while I do understand the allure. And so when I first started getting into making that pumpkin powder, I thought, I wonder how this would work to turn it into like a pumpkin spice latte since that's like the big thing every fall. So I took some of my pumpkin powder, added it to my coffee, a little cream, and some maple syrup, and some spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, clove. It was really good. The maple syrup was the perfect sweetener because of the type of flavor it added as well, and it was super easy. Now, one thing you gotta keep in mind when you're adding loose spices like that, you might end up with it kind of building up at the bottom of the mug. It doesn't really dissolve into the coffee, and so this is why people may prefer syrups and whatnot. I personally don't mind, but one of the things I was thinking of is if you had a stick blender, you could make that and just zip, just stick blend it, then pour it in your cup. Use a regular blender that will help blend everything good, maybe even froth it up for you if you like it that way after you add the heavy whipping cream. Or you make the whipped cream from the heavy whipping cream, which is also easy to do, and you put that on top as well. I mean, these are things that we can do at home if we really want to make a special treat. That's not going to break the bank. When you think about what it costs, so $16 for one cup, I could take that $16 and buy some coffee beans. Okay, you guys know I like which way do I go? I like my Shepherd's Crook coffee, but it is not cheap and the price keeps going up. And I don't blame them. Everything's costing more money. It's very expensive to buy their coffee because it's organic, it's low acid, all of the above, but everything is going up. Okay, so maybe you don't want to invest that much and you're trying to save money. Just get some quality organic coffee beans or pre-ground coffee if you would like. And you always pay more typically for pre-ground, and coffee beans, whole coffee beans will last longer. And you just grind them up before you use them, and then they'll just taste a lot fresher. But even Kirkland organic coffee is a decent coffee. It's some of the best price I've seen. You get it at Costco on organic whole coffee beans. So for $16, what is it? I think did I write down what the cost is? I looked it up to see what the current cost is. I think it was like that particular coffee was like $46 at Costco online. Sometimes it's a little cheaper if you go to a physical store. And that's 4 pounds of coffee. So what did I figure? Approximately $12 a pound. And for $12, you could get yourself enough coffee to last for at least a month, depending on how many people it's serving. And then for the other $4 that cost for that, put that into your little fancy schmancy stuff you're going to add to it. And you'll have at least a good month's worth of coffee. Now, I wanted to read off a few of the ideas I wrote down. And what I'm hoping that people in the chat and people in comments down below will do is share some other really great ideas of ways that you can fancy up your own coffee that doesn't mean having to also run out and buy the fancy coffee syrups. So, syrup, by the way, is an easy thing to make yourself. And you can keep it clear. You can have pieces in it. Like when I make like berry syrups, raspberry, blackberry, it's usually whole fruit that's been cooked into a syrup form. But obviously, you can strain it out and have a nice clear syrup with no pieces in it. Those can be used both as flavoring and as sweetener. Right here is a really good one in coffee. This is my homemade spruce tip syrup. So just from spruce tips that grow, the spruce that grows wild out there, or other piece of property, go out there and harvest, or in the early spring, the spruce tips, and make your own. It smells so good. Make your own spruce tip syrup. Super good in coffee. This one right here, as is the maple syrup. You can also make your own flavored extracts. I just brought a few in. Peppermint. When I make a peppermint extract, I make it from fresh peppermint. Now you can make you can make them totally alcohol free by using glycerin and water. And that way you would also have that sweetness to add to it, as well as the flavor. One of my favorite ones in the way it turned out is raspberry. My raspberry extract turned out so good. It's one of my very best ones. Obviously, there's vanilla, and I just brought in a few. This is cinnamon. I've never used it for anything. I just made a little bit because I was trying it. It seemed like it tasted good. And then, oh, I already showed the peppermint. Okay, because I only brought 4 of the extracts in there. But if you don't want to do extracts, again, make a syrup. I was reading somewhere where people were making syrup, like cinnamon syrup, or and the like. So that wouldn't be something you'd have to extract for a couple months. You would just make it. Typically, it's going to involve using sugar, good cane sugar, like organic blonde cane sugar. I usually get mine from Costco. You can get it from Azure Standard. Water, and then whatever thing you want to add to it for flavor. Whether it be the spruce tips, cinnamon sticks, or even just cinnamon powder, ground cinnamon. Preferably Ceylon, I think, is going to be the best in this case. And what else? Just anything else. Any flavor that you want. I've even made a chocolate extract, by the way, using cacao nibs and then extracting it. And that turned out really good too. And then you could get your chocolate flavor. You could add the peppermint extract and have a chocolate mint latte or whatever fancy drink. And so it doesn't have to break the bank if you want to treat yourself, but you want a way that's not only more natural and healthy, but it's going to save you a lot of money. Is it going to be a little extra work? Yeah, but not that much. Especially let's say you got your raspberries coming in, you got your blackberries coming in, you got your whatever's coming in, and you're making your syrups. Peach is another one. Peach syrup. I like making a peach syrup every so often, or rhubarb. I've made peach rhubarb syrup before. And these can be added to your coffees for the flavor and the sweetener. So you're getting both of those at once. And then all you need is whipping cream, or even half and half if you don't want it that rich. And it's so easy. And, just like the pumpkin spice, I do that maybe once a year. I'll make one of those. And it's really good. It's simple and it's good. I do have to say, though, if you're going to add your ground, I knew I was going to say something else about the Ceylon cinnamon. If you're going to add your ground spices directly to the coffee, then I recommend going with Ceylon in that case for sure, not the cassia cinnamon. They're actually from it. Cassia is not even considered true cinnamon, where Ceylon is considered the true cinnamon. But cassia cinnamon will turn slimy if you just toss it in there. It's kind of gross. So the Ceylon doesn't do that. It doesn't turn slimy. So that's another reason why I prefer Ceylon cinnamon over cassia. But I see your chocolate fudge sauce with the milk. Oh, I was gonna say that too. Make your own chocolate sauce or caramel sauce. I've got recipes on these. And you can use those in there. In fact, I decided to try my caramel sauce just for the heck of it and coffee. It was good. I didn't have to really add anything more to it because it sweetened it. It had the caramel flavor. It was great. But most of the time, by the way, I just drink my coffee black. Sometimes I do add some, which I didn't do yet today. I usually try to have a cup of coffee with some ground turkey tail mushroom. That's been one of the things that's really helped me lately. I do still got to shoot that video. I've been waiting until I knew I was feeling good enough, which I am now. I'm done with all that fatigue finally, but I need to remember to take my notes and so that I can put that video together. And yeah, it'll probably be on a live. Let me see. I wrote down a few other things too. So what I say? Homemade extracts, vanilla, orange. Don't forget you can make orange extract. Raspberry chocolate, spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, ginger. Your other fruit powders, other types of powders. Obviously, cacao powder. You can do that too. It just depends on how you want it. Do you want it really clear and clean and don't want anything in the bottom of it or have to keep mixing it up? Then you may want to make an extract or a syrup that's clear, or some of the stuff you can just add directly to it. But there's also fruit powder. So any of your berries that you can dehydrate, like berries typically have a low sugar content compared to other types of fruits. And so when you dehydrate those, you can usually get them very crisp and then you can powder those and use those directly as a flavoring of just as they are. Let's see. So there's that. Okay, I said the maple syrup. Also, honey, another good sweetener right there. I did say chocolate syrup, caramel sauce, and okay, I think I covered all of this stuff. But anyway, so my point in all that is again, for the cost of one really fancy. So this woman must have been adding a lot of stuff to get it up over $16 to that little Starbucks. And she said it was a Starbucks. So I don't know about other coffee stands, but and where she was located. But for the cost of $16, I would say you could take that same $16 that you spent on just one and have enough to make you one every day for at least a month. it's and it's easy and you can be creative and make it your own way. And yes, you can buy those fancy Torani coffee flavored syrups, but I don't know what all's in those. So if you're also looking for a healthier way to do it, just look at making your own syrups. I know that you can look it up and find recipes for making your own coffee syrups. So, yeah, I mean, if I was really big into all the fancy schmancy coffees, then I would I would get more serious into making that stuff. Every now and then I just try something for the heck of it, but it's just not an important thing to me personally. But yeah, again, there's nothing wrong with treating yourself, but to do it every day at that cost when you're in extreme amount of credit card debt already is insane, in my personal opinion. So holding herself accountable by running out and buying that and saying, "Look what I bought." Is that really what she's trying to do, or is she just showing off what she's spending her money on? I don't know. It seemed really dumb to me. I think if I was going to show the world, if I knew I was a massive spendthrift and I was going to show the world to hold myself accountable, I would be more conscientious. Like, okay, maybe the great finds at Old Navy, $6 t-shirts for your boys, and we know how boys are with their clothes. Well, not just boys. Rowan, my granddaughter, she doesn't necessarily get holes in her clothes, but she's messy. She's stains her clothes badly all the time. So, Of course, half the time she comes out of the bathroom with her pants on inside out and backwards anyway, and a lot of times we're just like, "Whatever." Next time she goes to the bathroom, they'll be the right way. They'll be turned the right way, because that's what happens. She peels off her pants, and then she pulls them back on there inside out. Then she goes back in there, does the same thing again, and she pulls them back on the right side out, but then this time they're actually backwards. That's what happened yesterday. No kidding. It's not a joke. She really did do that. Hilarious. And by the way, now I call her my little T-Rex, and she knows what I'm talking about because I showed her that picture of the cartoon, whatever, T-Rex with the pigtails, and I said that, "That's you, Rowan." So she laughs every time, but she goes, "Teeth." I love it. Anyway, I'm glad she has a good sense of humor about it. Grandma calling her a little T-Rex. My little T-Rex. Okay. Now, that's that the why I no longer wax cheese topic was going to do today, but I'm saving that for next week. So I'll share my is I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do. I just like to share why I personally don't do it. I last topic. This should be pretty quick. So again, another one of those topics that came up during a live last week. I thought it'd be a good idea to bring this up again, and that is, what is the true meaning of hoard or hoarding or hoarder? We've become in recent years, we've come to see this as an insult. And sometimes when people know that we prepare, we might show them our pantry or show them the kind of things we're stocking up on. Oh, you're a hoarder. They do that as intentionally to insult you, but don't take it as an insult. Excuse me, throat's drying out. So for those who haven't bothered to take the time to actually, wait, I gotta read this. Oh, shucks. And I was going to say wax on and wax off. And wax off no more. Very funny. Okay, anyway, before I get sidetracked too far, let me read. Well, there's several definitions, but they all pretty much come back to the same thing. So the definition, the main definition is like a hoard is a supply or store held or hidden for future. Wow, how hard is that? So Noah was a hoarder. Joseph was a hoarder in this case. They were saving, because they were putting food on that ark. Joseph was storing up that grain to get them through the 7 years of famine that was yet to come. So he had to have 7 years worth hoarded up. So let's look at nature now. There are in nature a good number of animals that God created to be hoarders. That is in their instinct to hoard. I'm sure some of them are already coming to your mind, such as squirrels, pretty much a lot of rodents, rats, mice, moles. What else here? Chipmunks, corvids. So anything a corvid family, like ravens, crows, and jays. I would assume also magpies. They're hoarders. And woodpeckers, in particular acorn woodpeckers. Gee, I wonder what it is they like to hoard. Very much like squirrels, it sounds like. And then the one we read about in scripture are the ants. So there's a couple of Bible verses that people like to quote a lot when they talk about preparedness and how the Bible does even promote it. So when somebody calls you a hoarder, you can say yes, just like the ant in Proverbs 6:6-8. I think it's important you read all three of those verses and not just one. And that verse goes like such: Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in summer and gathereth her food in harvest. She's hoarding, right? There's also a scripture, a lot of people, another one about ants that goes right along with this that a lot of people forget to quote right along with that, and that's in Proverbs 30:25. The ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer. Okay, so I have more. I have more. I forgot that it wasn't just this short little section, it's also this too. So let me read what I wrote here. I'm just going to read this. I'm just going to read what I wrote. I usually don't do it this way. I usually use these as notes, but people who resort to insults do this to deflect because even if they may see the prudence of putting up for hard times, they simply do not want to, nor want to feel guilty for not doing so. YOLO is their motto. Now, if you have never heard of the phrase YOLO, it is an acronym that stands for you only live once. And sadly, this mentality is what's driving a whole bunch of young people in the especially in my generation and up as well, but especially in younger generations than me. So the you only live once. Who cares? You're all going to die. Let's get ourselves deep into death. Well, that too. Let's get ourselves deep in debt and not worry about the future. Well, first of all, you really don't know how long you are going to live. And what happens when you get into your 70s, your 80s, and 90s, and you have nothing to show for it, not one thing. And you're just barely scraping by on your Social Security, if you even have that. Especially for our future generations, it's very likely not even going to be there for them. And how are they going to make it? Again, this morning, listening to more of this, I don't know why it's been fascinating me so much lately, but it's been giving me good video fodder. But listening to some of these people calling in today, I'm not watching the Dave Ramsey show. It's another guy, but he uses clips from him and other such channels where people are calling in, and some of these people would be like my mom's age, and they, like one woman, no, this woman was younger, she was probably in her 50s, but there was one woman that called in and said she realized she's in trouble. They've already been bankrupt once because of her, gone bankrupt, or filed for bankruptcy once, turned around, got herself back into $85,000. That might not sound like a lot if you're thinking cars and houses. No, this is credit card debt. $85,000 of credit card debt. And guess what? Her husband knew nothing about it. She was hiding it from him. And then she realized when she actually saw how much, all this time, was she not paying attention to how much money she spent? She one day finally notices, oh wow, I'm $85,000 in debt. What am I going to do? And my husband doesn't know. Scary. So anyway, I kind of got, but my point is this: you only live once attitude. This is what it leads to. People are losing their houses and homes. I also saw another clip where somebody was showing, it looked like a car lot, but it wasn't a car lot. It was a bank packed full of cars that had been repossessed because people couldn't make their payments. Everybody's out trying to impress everyone. It's not so much about keeping up with the Joneses. It's about keeping up with your favorite influencer. It's getting worse all the time, and it's just downright scary seeing where we're going. And yet, these are the same people that want to say you're a hoarder and say it like it's a bad thing. Why do we think it's a bad thing? Well, because we know there's also people who do have some serious issues that they might need counseling over that get into hoarding in a way. I really just think they should have chose a better term, but they are hoarding stuff, but not in the same way. A lot of it is people that just they just throw their trash in a corner and let it pile up because they don't want to deal with it. A lot of them are suffering from different traumas. And so they're equating you being prudent, you being smart and looking out for your future like used to be the common way of doing things. They're equating that to someone who's got some deep psychological issues. They're not the same thing. Let's make hoarding a good term again. Because instead of it being an insult, but even if people want to insult you with that, just remember where they're probably coming from. And we got to try not to be insulting right back, but quoting the scriptures, I think, especially if they're Christians that will say that, because I've been called some of the meanest people when I first started getting into preparedness were those in my own church. Literally calling me crazy in front of everybody else on the worship team when we were practicing. A couple of different times. Now, I will say this person has since apologized, but that's something it's hard to forget, being belittled like that in front of other people. You're crazy. And I knew the truth was they just didn't want to do it. So anyway, what made it harder was this was someone a lot of people looked up to too. Let's see here. I had some examples. Okay, so I want to give the last thing I want to say on this topic is I want to give an example about what happens here. Okay, in our small little remote town that has, I would say, I'm going to have to guess, somewhere between 8 to 10 power outages every year. Some are only an hour, some are several hours, some may last a whole day or two. These are common. It's commonplace. Some of them are planned, a lot of them are not. But even the scheduled power outages, sorry, I don't. My brain is not trying to form words correctly. Even with notice, because the utility, the public utility, they will notify people when there's going to be a planned power outage. And even with people knowing that, when the power goes out, they still freak out. And you know what most of them are freaking out about? They're not freaking out about the fact that I don't know how I'm going to cook my food. I don't know how I'm going to keep my kids warm. They're freaking out about how am I going to keep my kids entertained? I am not kidding you. I am not exaggerating. This is what I see happen in the Facebook, our local town group page, every time the power goes out. And I always go in there to look only because I keep forgetting to notify the PUD that whatever number they're using isn't the same number. And I don't always watch Facebook for updates on what the PUD is doing. So if the power goes out, I'll go to Facebook and look. I'll go to the PUD Facebook page and I'll go to the group page and see if there's any posts. And I'm like, okay, good. That way I'll know it's not just me and not something that went wrong. This time of year is not a big deal at all because we get so much solar power. But even in the winter, it's not a big deal because we have our wood stove and all that. But I still like to know. And that's when I start seeing. And when I say this, I'm talking about people that were born and raised here, not newcomers that don't know any better and realize this is very common. No, people that were born and raised here that still have not learned to be prepared for these frequent power outages. Why? Do they really think it'll never happen again? I remember the first time I hadn't lived here very long. Patrick and I had just got married. We had a power outage. We had one oil lamp that was gifted to us as a wedding gift, and we already had the wood stove, thankfully. And I remember how grateful, and flashlights, I was that we had those things. The wood stove, because it was middle of winter, and that one oil lamp. And it was the thing that made me go, we need to have more of this stuff on hand. And if you try to run down to the store and get some of that stuff, then, well, everybody else was down there buying it all up too. Because still, even back then, there were more people that were in that mindset, but still a lot of people like me that were still kind of new to how things worked here. And I don't think we had as many power outages back then like we do now. Yet people born and raised here all their lives still haven't decided to be smart, invest in a few oil lamps, a way to stay warm, and how about some board games? With a couple of oil lamps and board games, that's what we do, our card games. How hard is that? No, I can't keep my child entertained because we don't have internet access, and so they can't play their video games, or they don't have the power to run the video games, or whatever. I'm just like, why is that more important? And how hard is it to come up with activities to entertain your children? And by the way, why do we always have to entertain our children? Maybe they should learn how to go do something from scratch. Maybe go chop some firewood or do something to help during those situations rather than just, oh, here's an iPad or here's your Xbox or whatever. I'm going to run out and get a generator because I can't live without my video games. Anyway, so my point in bringing all that up is, again, these are the same people that want to insult you when they learn that you're being frugal and you're looking out for your future, your spouse's future, your family's future, even your grandchildren's future when these events come up and you're set. For some reason, that makes you crazy and it makes you a hoarder. Well, just take it more as a compliment because really that you're doing the right thing. You don't even have to explain yourself, but if you do, try to be as loving and kind about it as possible, because if we start becoming insulting back, it's not going to do anything to help the situation. They're just going to turn you off. Sometimes with me, I find it best to just, okay, I'm not going to say anything else, because if I open my mouth to say anything, I'm going to tear this person to shreds, and that's not the right way to handle the situation, nor is it Christ-like. Though let's see, Jesus did pull out a whip and start whipping people and flipping tables. Can I do that? Anyway, calling people whitewashed tombs and all that. So anyway, that was my third topic. Let me read a few comments, some of the chat, and then I'll have to close down and go do my stuff. So you can also go do your stuff. See, I have extra and I like it that way. Very grateful until I have to move a wall of my saved goods to install an air conditioner in the winter. I hear you there too. I just would like more organization. Let me tell you something, Gail. The organization thing is ongoing. Every time I get my pantry, it's like, okay, everything's nice and neat and organized. I would feel comfortable if somebody walked in and saw my pantry right now. A month later, it's like, nah, because maybe I'm stocking up on something different, or decide I want to stock up on more stuff, or we're getting to the end of the season where I got to do a lot of rotations. Yeah, I'm in the process of, usually this is the time of year things start getting reorganized again, but it seems like it never really lasts a very long time. It's always a work in progress, just like, learning better ways to put up food and keep yourself warm and cook your food. And yeah, I mean, it's always a work in progress. We're always learning something new. Just like in this list I read earlier, I learned some new things. I don't know if they're going to be applicable here, but at least I've got some fresh ideas that aren't really fresh at all. They're old ideas that have been forgotten. Not forbidden so much, but maybe just forgotten. So let's see. Struggling today. I have to move stuff, then install, then move it all back. Getting help. They don't understand the extra. Yeah, I can imagine. Yep, that is what I hate. Stuff like that. Yeah, I had to do some major rehauling in that back room to move some stuff around and get out some old stuff and put in some new stuff. And I tell Hubs I don't have too much stuff. I have too little space. There you go. Tyler says, if you wanted to see, Terry says, actually, if you wanted to see a clean house, that was last week. There you go. Or you get the house all cleaned up and then the grandbabies come over. Yeah. Mud puddles make happy kids. There you go. There you go. I'm going to scroll up and see if there's anything else. Let's see. The difference between good hoarding and bad hoarding is one is intentional. I mean, it is done with intention, not because you're unable to help yourself. There you go. Correct. Oh, hazelnut. Yes, hazelnut is another good flavor. I wonder if you could get a hazelnut flavor, a good hazelnut flavor from hazelnuts. Though that sounds like a very expensive way to make an extract. Hazelnuts are not cheap. That'd be one to think about. Maybe give it a try. This, like with the cinnamon, a lot of times if I want to just try making an extract, I did one with a star anise to get a licorice flavor, though I would never use that in coffee. I don't think I'd like that. But you can always try doing small amounts. And I just stuck it in this bottle because, well, it's a bottle. I just always forget I have it. But even like a little quarter pint jar, it's just a little 4-ounce jar. And get a few of those and try making some different extracts and just experiment. And then that way you're not, if it doesn't really turn out, you haven't lost much in that. And that's what I like to do when trying something different is just go for a small amount. If I like it, then I'll make a big amount. Like I did with the chocolate when I used the chocolate nibs and made a chocolate extract. That turned out really good. So I made a bigger size, like so it'd fill up a jar or a bottle this size. But of course, I keep forgetting I have it. A nice French roast coffee with cream is all this girl needs. See, it doesn't have to be fancy, but like I said, if you want to treat yourself now and then. Okay, what am I missing? Oh, there's Billy. See, every time I build a new shelf, things appear to put on it, right? That's what it's for. But sometimes I think things just migrate there to those shelves on their own. It's kind of like the slugs that just appear out of nowhere in our garden. I think things in my pantry do the same thing. It's like, where'd that come from? How'd that get there? What is that? Anyway. Well, it was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed the topics today. The whole talking about finances lately has just been kind of really on my mind a lot. And I might do more topics like that, hoping that it will help people kind of think. And okay, I don't need this piece of paper. I'm just going to rip it off there. And, just give some people some ideas that might help them with whatever, help people make better decisions. I will say I am definitely happy to see a lot of younger generation people like my kids' age, that are doing these channels. There's several of them out there that are doing these channels that are talking about being more financially wise. And, there was that scripture I heard today. I'm not going to quote it accurately, but it's basically that a man of no understanding will strike hands, basically make a deal and co-sign for somebody else, meaning that it's not a smart move. And that's another thing that's been happening is a lot of people co-signing. One of the things I heard this morning was a church wanting like a $7 million loan or something like that and asking the senior members of the church to co-sign for them. I'm sorry. You don't need that kind of money to have a good church. I mean, if it really comes down to it, you can have church in your home, just like used to be done, just like we do. Church, they've been doing it for years, and it's an at-home church, and we love it. So, anyway, as soon as it became clear who was going to win the last presidential election, I bought stock in all the military industrial complex companies. Oh dear. Nothing new under the sun. Isn't that the truth? Pantry is ongoing based on what food is coming in. There's that too, obviously. Definitely. Yeah. So like I always say, when I'm canning something, like the plums, it was first time I canned plums in several years because it was first time I had plums to can. So I had to do some rearranging and kind of fix things up. I try to keep all my fruit in the same basic area, all the meat and potatoes in one area, all the vegetables usually pretty close to the fruit. I usually try to keep that stuff, at least have some sort of organization so I know where to go look for them. But then it's like, man, I'm going to have to do some rotation here and think of a different way to do this because I can't fit all the fruit and vegetables in this same area. So yeah, it's definitely an ongoing process of organization. So nobody feel bad or guilty if your pantry doesn't look like the photos you always see or the pantry tours you see. I haven't seen one in a long, long time. My guess is what happens before anybody does a pantry tour or takes a photo would be the same thing I do. I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna get this organized. Now I'm gonna do my little tour or take a picture. It's like, okay, not doing that again. Because a week later or a month later or whatever, it doesn't look so nice and neat anymore. You're only going to take those pictures and those video clips when your pantry is in pristine condition and it never lasts. Nobody posts the mess or emptiness. Now, that true. Now, I don't, because I'll just admit that though I really try to keep my pantry organized and looking nice, it often gets quite messy when I've got a lot of stuff that I need to figure out what to do with or things that I need to change up. And I don't mind admitting it, but I'm not going to show it. And the reason why is because of all the trolls. That's where the trolls like to come out. And, because I still get trolls. How come you have your jars stacked? How come you have bands on your jars? It's like, it doesn't matter how many times I explain it. Someone's going to just, and it's not just asking a question. That's one thing. It's the ones that's wrong. You're not supposed to do that. It's like, leave me alone. Go away. I don't say that. I usually just link them back to a video where I explain why, and you'll see some jars with lids and some without, and the way the things are stacked and how, yes, this is safe. See, I have 7 children. I'm not posting anything inside my house without cleaning the crap out of everything in frame. Agreed. I mean, yes, I get it. I don't have 7 children, but I tell you, when all 4 grandbabies are here and the littlest one, she's getting pretty mobile. She's going to start walking pretty soon. And yeah, peanut butter sandwich pieces all over the place. Oh, it drives me crazy. But anyway, it's like, yeah. So, okay, for reals, I got to get going, people. I know you got to get going too. I know you're as busy as I am, if not more so. So anyway, I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for coming in. As always, just enjoy our time together and take care and God bless. Bye.